Welcome to Second City News. I'm Ilka Rogers. In the program today, we're looking at a number of stories which all seem to question our ability to be tolerant. We'll hear about the latest about the storm in India caused by a BBC documentary, India's Daughter. We'll find out what happened when a government minister came to Birmingham to explore Islamophobia and hear what a local expert in social media has to say about the brutal killing of a blogger in Bangladesh. But first, a Delhi court has blocked the broadcast of a BBC documentary based on gang rape of a young 23-year-old woman in 2012. India's Daughter, the controversial BBC story-built film directed by Leslie Udwin, was aired here on Wednesday. Angry social media users in India are complaining that the documentary featured an interview with one of the rapists on death row. The Indian Home Minister has promised an investigation into whether norms had been violated for the filming. Sandhya Iyer now joins us in studio with more details. Sandhya, why was the ban implemented?
Well, just to give a brief recount of what happened that night of 16 December in 2012, this young woman was returning home with her male friend, and they got on board a private bus in the city, and that's when there were 6 men in the bus who beat up her friend and they raped her. Well, according to the Home Minister's statement, he said that the documentary appears to incite violence against women, and the people have been protesting largely, saying that that such documentaries are giving rapists a platform to share their thoughts. There were also 2 lawyers in the documentary, and they made similar comments like the rapists, and they said that we don't allow our women to get out of their houses after 6:30 and 7:30. And one of the most shocking comments made by the rapist in the documentary was when he said, and I quote, that when being raped, she shouldn't fight back, she should just be silent and allow the rape.
So what was the BBC's response to such criticisms?
Well, the BBC issued a press release in its defense, and it said that the decision to air, and I quote, the harrowing documentary made with the full support and cooperation of the victims' parents, and the film handles the issue responsibly, and we are confident the program fully complies with our editorial guidelines.
And what are the Indian citizens having to say?
Well, they vented their frustrations on social media. Many of them took to Facebook and Twitter, and several hashtags like ban BBC and boycott BBC were trending in India at the time. And some of the comments that people tweeted were that the BBC is doing what Western media does best, glorifying and making a celebrity out of a psycho rapist. However, there have been positive reactions as well in support of the documentary. There's an ongoing online petition which currently has 61 signatures, and it's addressed to the Home Minister.
Thank you, Sandhya. Coincidentally, the British government's Committee on Human Rights published its report on violence against women and girls this week. It concludes that progressive work aimed at tackling violence against women and girls abroad is not translating into its domestic policy. Dr. Hywell Francis, who's the chair of the committee, said that gender inequality was present in many cultures in the UK, which was a case and consequence of violence against women. He went on to point out that the portrayal of women as victims of violence is deeply embedded in cultural stereotypes, in the depiction of women in the media, and in how women are treated in the asylum system. The Birmingham Integration Roadshow was held earlier this week at Birmingham City University. It was attended by representatives from local and government organizations. I also attended the event, the roadshow, to hear concerns from different communities and discover what is being done locally to combat Islamophobia and hate crimes.
An offence has taken place.
The roadshow began with a facilitated group discussion on policing and hate crimes, identity and belonging, and the media's coverage of issues on extremism and Islamophobia. The concerns, suggestions, and questions raised in the discussion were then presented to a panel.
It needs to be more approachable, more visible, so that people would think about reporting hate crimes. So then
comments from government like multiculturalism has failed aren't particularly helpful. Promoting diversity and multiculturalism, looking at discrimination.
Media should present the positive things to contrast the highlighted negative aspects.
The panel included the Bishop of Birmingham and Parliamentary Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, Lord Tariq Ahmad of Wimbledon.
The whole idea is to come together to identify what are the nature of anti-Muslim hatred, and then more importantly what we can do to tackle it.
Her daughter's headscarf had been pulled off in a public event.
One of the female panelists raised concerns over how Muslim women in Birmingham were being dealt with by the police when reporting hate crimes.
Islamophobia and discrimination particularly is an issue which the Muslim Women's Network are dealing with. Now, the Muslim Women's Network recently launched a helpline. It's based in Birmingham. You can call us on these issues and we will offer information, support and advice on these issues. So we see many of these issues come through our helpline, and what I'd really like to encourage women to do is report. So don't put up with domestic violence, don't put up with Islamophobia and discrimination. Support and advice is really available to you. So I would really encourage you to report these issues to other organizations like ourselves, but others also.
Senior criminology lecturer Imran Awan discusses how local communities are working alongside the government to tackle extremism.
Well, it's looking at wider counterterrorism legislation, policies like the PREVENT strategy, which looks at trying to tackle violent extremism. And part of my role working with government is to try and find some possible solutions to how we can deal with that, as well as anti-Muslim hate crime, Islamophobia, and all the other types of associated problems.
Okay. Did you come up with any solutions as yet, or?
Well, it's a long-term process, so it's a process that has started. We're looking to work more closely with schools, universities, colleges, mosques, younger people, internet service providers, lots of different people to try and tackle this type of narrative that's being sent out by extremist groups.
Our reporter Magda Lakovska was also at the roadshow. Magda, what was the key topic of discussion?
So, discussion was on 3 themes. One of them was policing and hate crime. One of them was identity and belonging and the role of media. My task was to engage the conversation about the role of media and then present the key points.
So what were some of the points raised in the discussion?
So the key points of the discussion were that the media does not give an accurate and reliable description of what is really happening, especially regarding the Muslim community. Muslims specifically are very often pinpointed and shown as a cause of hostility and basically as terrorists. People are guided by prejudice and stereotypes rather than reliable information and the true picture. Without knowing actually facts about the culture, Islamic culture and religion, they are making judgments based on what media shows them. Imran Ivan, a senior lecturer at BCU, made a good point. He said that the coverage, negative media coverage, was caused by what happened in 2011. The solutions mentioned during the discussions were mostly about a better press regulation. So, for instance, when a newspaper is releasing an article on the first page, a really harmful one, and then they are releasing an apology somewhere at the end of it where nobody can see it actually. More individual, personal and truthful stories should be shown to expose different angles and point of views. Not that only radical extremists are shown. Social media creates a big opportunity as well to express opinions and set against unreliable information, like in case of recent release from Fox News, where Stephen Emerson, and here is a quote, said that Birmingham is a no-go city for no Muslims. After that, there was a storm on social media and basically in media later. So the apology had to be released.
Thank you, Magda. Well, still on the subject of tolerance, or lack of it, the brutal murder of eminent Bangladeshi blogger Abhijit Roy last week raised the question of that country's respect for freedom of expression. Abhijit Roy was well known for expressing his secular views in his blog. Social media expert Dave Hart spoke to Second City News' Priya Raj about the significance of this story.
Many places in the world,
in Saudi Arabia. There's a blogger there who's been punished by a series of public beatings against which there's been a lot of international protest. But of course that's just the scratching the surface really. So some other cases, like the cases you're talking about, actually get a modest sort of international attention, but there are many others that don't get any attention at all really. But it does highlight the ways in which free speech is coming under attack, and in particular I suppose it highlights the ways in which the internet offers an amazing opportunity for us to express our views and for us to say what we think and feel, and I hope others share those thoughts, but that comes up against the often brutal and vicious regimes under which people have to live their everyday lives really. So it's a very worrying trend. And perhaps there is some technological solutions to protecting the identity of these bloggers, so that if they want to say what they feel in regimes where that isn't acceptable, at least they have some form of protection. And we've seen, you know, the ways in which people like Edward Snowden was safeguarded in the ways in which he used technology to encrypt conversations with journalists so that he wasn't found out. Hopefully we would see that spread to the blogosphere and political bloggers being helped by technology companies, or you know, or other bloggers or journalists to hide their identity, but still let the powerful messages come out.
Staying in Birmingham, the City Council this week passed a £105 million cuts package despite protests by people over the past few months. The council meeting was held earlier on Tuesday and was stalled 3 times by anti-cut campaigners. They had to be escorted out of the public gallery the second time, and the meeting came to a halt with the 3rd disturbance. Some of the services to be directly affected by the cuts are libraries and children's centres. People were also protesting outside the council, and some voiced their concerns to the cuts imposed on the Library of Birmingham. Labour leader Sir Albert Bohr said children protection would receive an increased funding of £21 million and outlined the improvement plans brought in following the findings of the Kerslake report and the Trojan Horse School scandal. In an attempt to levy extra funds, the City Council has proposed to start charging for parking at tourist attractions and recreational parks. This has met opposition from many residents who are now backing a petition against the introduction of parking fees. Keela Harrison has the details.
The petition to cease the proposal for car park charges in local parks has already been signed by over 1,500 supporters for various reasons.
I think it's wrong really, because most people that are here come here because of the free parking. I think it would diminish the use of the park a lot if you had to pay to be here. Also, a lot of people use the cafe and stuff, and they pay to use the facilities in there, so I think it would be completely wrong to do it.
I think it will mean that a lot of people stop coming to use the park and the MAC, and I think that'll obviously be detrimental to the MAC, and it'll be a shame that the outdoor space is not used as frequently by members of the public.
I'm concerned about it because it has been a free facility as long as we've known it. On the other hand, I appreciate that the council are short of cash, and a lot of the people who use it I think are probably able to afford to pay a fee as long as it's reasonable for parking.
According to town planning expert Robert Putin, there are other measures the council can take to save and raise money.
Well, they can cut back on some of the wastage they have. For example, there's an awful lot of highway works I see going down the road. Is all that really necessary? I question that. Equally, in terms of they could send some things out to private tender. Certainly, for example, where is it? Northampton County Council are outsourcing the majority of their services. Birmingham hasn't done any of that. So I'm not saying you go to that extreme, but you could certainly include some of it.
Birmingham City Council must make over £1 million between this year and next year. This is as a result of central government cuts. The proposed car park charges is just one of a number of measures to raise funds.
Prime Minister David Cameron has said that child sexual abuse will now be treated as a national threat. Speaking at a summit in Downing Street, Mr. Cameron, alongside various government officials, met leaders from local authorities, children's services, health professionals, chief constables, and experts in child protection. He outlined plans to tackle child abuse, warning that teachers, counselors, and social workers who turned a blind eye to the issue could face up to 5 years in prison. He cited an Oxfordshire case review into child abuse that found up to 373 children could have been victims of child sexual grooming over the past 16 years. Mr. Cameron said young girls are being abused over and over again on an industrial scale, being raped, being passed from one bunch of perpetrators to another bunch of perpetrators. He further stressed that too many organizations and too many people are walking on by, and we've really got to resolve this issue, that it stops here, it doesn't happen again, and we recognize abuse for what it is. The unnecessary deaths of 11 babies and one mother at a Cumbrian hospital was due to a lethal mix of shocking failures, according to a report this week. The avoidable incidents, described as serious and shocking, came to light following an inquiry into the University Hospitals of Morecambe NHS Trust. Dr. Bill Kirkup, a former senior Department of Health official, led the investigation.
I've set out in the report the failures of care that resulted from poor clinical competence, from fractured relationships between professional groups, and the unacceptable pursuit of normal childbirth. Itself a worthwhile aim, but not when it occurs at any cost, as was described to the panel. I've also set out the most severe harm that resulted from these failures of care. There were 20 instances of significant failures of care in Furness General Hospital maternity unit, which may have contributed to the deaths of 3 mothers and 16 babies. I should just clarify that the number of 20 also includes somebody where there was not a death. Different clinical care in those cases would have been expected to prevent the death of 1 mother and 11 babies. And that was almost 4 times the frequency of such occurrences at the Trust's other main maternity unit at the Royal Lancaster Infirmary.
The report also suggests that the maternity unit had been dysfunctional, with substandard care provided by staffs deficient in skills and knowledge, and had repeatedly failed to learn any lessons. Now this Sunday, March 8th, is International Women's Day. All over the world, there will be different events happening to mark the occasion. But what does it mean for women living in Birmingham? We asked you to know, how are you planning to celebrate it?
Well, I had no idea that there was a Women's Day, but if I was going to celebrate it, I'd probably surround myself with powerful women like my mum, and I don't know, just tell her that I appreciate her as a woman and just celebrate being a woman.
Where I'm from, it's more Day of the Mother, so I've sent a card to my mom.
The males and women are in the same stage, and they got the same chance to fighting with everything. So I don't think so. I don't think the the Women's Day is so important for now.
I didn't know women had a Women's Day actually, so I don't know how I'll be spending it. But yeah, now that I know, I might check it out.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna celebrate it, but obviously if I'm gonna get a bunch of flowers or at least 1 flower, I would be pleased.
In Taiwan, we just have holidays, so we don't really celebrate it, but we got holidays for Children's Day and Women's Day.
Royal Mail has announced that it will join the Chinese Alibaba Tmall Global e-marketplace, which is the largest business-to-consumer retail platform in Asia. Royal Mail's new shop front on Tmall Global is expected to go live towards the end of March. It will provide high-quality British products with delivery to the doorstep of China's 300 million online shoppers. Royal Mail Chief Executive Moya Green says this will offer British retailers and exporters an opportunity to access the China market. It will remove the challenges that many companies would otherwise face in getting their products into the hands of Chinese consumers. It has been several days since the Russian opposition politician Boris Nemtsov have been laid to rest, amid speculation on who might have been responsible for his killing and why, world leaders led by Prime Minister David Cameron and the US President Barack Obama have called for a transparent investigation.
What I've called for is a full investigation and hopefully an independent investigation of what happened. Whether that can occur inside today's Russia or not is not clear. The individual involved is somebody that I actually met with back in 2009. And this is an indication of a climate, at least, inside of Russia, in which civil society, independent journalists, people trying to communicate on the internet have felt increasingly threatened, constrained, and increasingly the only information that the Russian public is able to get is through state-controlled media outlets. That is a problem. It's part of what has allowed, I think, Russia to engage in the sort of aggression that it has against Ukraine.
Later this month, we'll get the biggest blackout we've had for 16 years. No, the electricity isn't being cut off. I'm talking about a solar eclipse. Roughly 90% of the sun will be hidden from us. Our reporter Zijin Wan has been looking into what we can expect. Zijin, when will it happen in Birmingham?
Well, the space expert said we are in for a treat on the morning of March the 20th. And the eclipse will begin in Birmingham at 8:25 a.m. and the maximum at 9:21 a.m. And it will finish at maybe 19 to 11 in the morning.
Okay, now the sun has an effect on the weather. How will this affect the weather, the eclipse?
Well, it will give us a considerable darkening time, and you will experience a drop in temperatures, and especially a few minutes over the maximum. Well as the sudden cold, you will notice that the birds stop singing and the dogs start to howling and barking.
Now, will we be able to see a total eclipse in Birmingham?
Well, not exactly. The particle eclipse will be 91% of sun in Birmingham, and it's more than that in London because they only see 80% there. Mm-hmm.
It is also said that you should not look directly into the sun. So how will people be able to observe the eclipse?
Well, there are a variety of methods to view the eclipse, but for my recommendation, I think the most useful to us is to use the eclipse glasses. Well, you can check in with in the local natural history or space museum or some astronomy club to rent or buy. But I'm so sure that at that day, somebody was selling them on the street because it's a good chance to make money.
Thank you, Zijuan. In sports this week, Aston Villa picked up their first victory for the year in a Premier League match against West Bromwich Albion. Villa got 3 points back at home at the Hawthorn Stadium, which lifted them out of the Premier League relegation zone. Gabriel Aboglahor scored the first goal for Villa at the 22nd minute. But at the 66th of the second half, Zahiro Baharino made the draw for West Bromwich Albion. However, this was short-lived as Christian Bentek scored the victory goal for Villa in the last minute. And tomorrow, both Aston Villa and West Bromwich Albion are going head-to-head again for the quarter-final match of the FA Cup. But which team is going to win?
I think Villa will edge it 2-1.
I don't know, but I'm assuming it's going to be Aston Villa.
I think, by the sound of it, Aston Villa will win.
It's going to be West Bromwich Albion, just for the reason that Aston Villa's manager recently hasn't been sort of doing the team justice. Like, he hasn't been playing to his full expectation. Like, he's let the team down a lot. So I think West Bromwich Albion will have that against them.
I don't know, it's going to be a tough one to call, but I've got a funny feeling that the momentum's with Aston Villa to win it. Just because the fear factor that Tim Sherwood's brought back into the club. So yeah, Aston Villa gets it for me.
I think Aston Villa are going to be the winners, and that's because I love the colours blue and white.
Aston Villa, because they won yesterday, so they could win on Saturday.
I have no idea because I don't follow football. I
have no clue. I'm actually indifferent towards it. I don't really care.
Well, good luck to both sides and all other teams playing tomorrow. Let's see what the weather has in store for the weekend. A rather cloudy start at first, but it will remain dry with more sunny spells developing throughout the day. Turning breezy with mild winds tomorrow, some rain expected on Sunday, and top temperatures of 11 degrees. And that's it for Second City News. Have a great weekend. We'll see you again next Friday.